Welcome to the Supply Chain Beyond the Hype podcast with me, Chris Clowes, and a variety of guests from across the supply chain world, ready to share their insights, stories, and experience to help you go beyond the hype. Hello everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of Supply Chain Beyond the Hype, where we aim to cut through all the buzzwords and all the hype and see what's happening in the world of supply chain. This month's topic is going right to the heart of buzzwords and hype, and we're going to be looking at how AI is developing in the supply chain with two guests from Shiny Blue Box. We have Fran Brown, who's Innovation and Transformation Director, and Gary Hughes, Sales Director, both from Shiny Blue Box. So welcome both to the podcast. I really appreciate the time. Maybe you can both kick off with a brief introduction to A, yourselves, B, one of you can obviously cover what Shiny Blue Box does, and then also maybe just a slightly off topic, how are you using AI in your personal life, and sort of how are you integrating that into the way that you work? Maybe Fran, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Gary, I'll leave the Shiny Blue Box introduction to yourself. Sure. I'm the Innovation and Transformation Director at Shiny Blue Box. So I've kind of always got my foot in both what are we doing now with our customers to help them get started in their journeys and progress those journeys through automation and AI. But I've always got kind of one foot in the future as well. What's coming soon? How can we help customers prepare for that as well?
Great, thanks, Fran. So, thanks for having us, Chris. It's good to be here. So I'm Gary Hughes. I'm Sales Director at Shiny Blue Box. So we are an AI dedicated consultancy. We help our clients unlock real value from AI and automation. We see the world as a technology agnostic consultancy. So we cover all of the different kind of AI solutions that are out there, but ultimately we're client centric. So we focus on driving value with our customers. And we do everything from helping them with their strategy on AI to also, of course, developing and delivering projects. Interesting, kind of like my personal world, I'm a dedicated gym goer. Many may not think so, right? But I love routine. I love data and progress. And I think what fascinates me is thinking about a gym analogy is how kind of small, consistent improvements, they compound over time. And that's a mindset that we see that you should take into AI. It's not a one-off project, it's incremental improvement, learning and optimizing. You track, you analyze, you adapt. That's where we see, transformation really happens.
Really nice analogy, and probably something that I've not heard from an AI journey before. We could have ended up in similar careers, Gary. I'm very organized and therefore went into supply chain and logistics. How to do things efficiently. And I mean, AI is everywhere at the moment. How much of it is hype and how much is actually going to help people make a difference? Maybe just on a macro level.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of hype. AI is everywhere now. It has become a bit of a buzzword. I think part of that comes from perhaps how loosely the term AI is being used. I think in supply chains, a lot of what's labelled as AI is really just clever automations, the more advanced algorithms that are doing what they've been told to do. I think true AI is really adaptive. I think it can learn, it can improve over time, and not just kind of follow a set of linear rules. And I think that's where we're starting to see kind of really cool results. And I'm sure Gary will agree. It's improving things like forecasting, planning, and actually taking the more traditional automation a step further by handling exceptions that would have needed a human before. So I think there is a lot of hype, yes, and to a certain extent, I think it is justified. It's a very exciting topic. It's taking things that previously were theory and becoming more reality. But I do think there is a lot of good and real progress there when it is being done properly as well.
And Gary, do you see confusion or misunderstanding when talking to clients kind of about AI, what they're asking for and what they want?
There's definitely misconceptions out there. I suggest, the biggest misunderstanding I see is that the the idea of AI being this, kind of plug and play magic button that, you can just buy a license, you can switch it on, and then suddenly the whole supply chain starts running itself. The truth is that AI is as good as the data and the processor that it sits underneath. We often meet customers that are excited about AI. They've read some headlines, they've seen some demos, but perhaps their data is scattered or their systems don't talk to each other and they haven't defined what success actually looks like. So what we try and do is, understand, that you've got to get the foundations right first. And once you've got that base, you start to see real transformation. And, AI genuinely starts to shine, but it's a journey and it's not a magic button, right?
Yeah, I think I was going to say I'd agree with Gary on that. I think sometimes that misconception and what Gary's saying is it doesn't have to be huge to be valuable. We've seen some really good successes with smaller AI use cases, maybe ones that are just focused on making life a little bit easier for the team. We've worked with customers where we've helped them build kind of AI agents that have access to huge amounts of data that either users or customers can kind of query by using an AI agent, and they get quicker responses from manual searching. And when we look at that, that's probably on the lower end of complexity when it comes to the AI projects, but actually it helps to kind of build out that program and just build a bit of confidence with using the tools as well.
There's a danger with a little bit of knowledge. I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but we'll come on to LLMs versus SLMs a little bit later on, which I think should be interesting. And Gary, you talk about data there, and I think that's been we've probably been talking about data in supply chains and in business and one version of the truth since computers were invented in the 70s and first rolled out in business. And we still have this challenge. Does AI help us to fix that in data accuracy, or do we fundamentally have that same challenge that's core to any business, that how do you get one version of the truth?
I don't know what your opinions are, Fran, but data is an important component of any project. Whether it's AI today and its current guise, or more traditional automation projects as they used to be back in the past. If the data is scattered, if the AI solutions can't understand and work with the data, there's often a need to review cleanup of data and systems before moving into an AI project. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Fran.
Yeah, completely agree, Gary. I think data is an important part of it, but I think where we've maybe seen people using AI to help improve data quality, and again, perhaps it is a comparison that's happening a lot at the moment, but it's kind of traditional automation versus AI of today, is when you think of free text kind of fields on a form or an input, AI having the capability to maybe standardize some of that into a set of rules or categories. So there's an example where, yes, I do believe that data is very important for AI projects, but also there is opportunity to use AI to help improve that as well.
Interesting. And you mentioned previously around the difference between AI when we look at the hype and then actually what's just advanced algorithms or black box algorithms. How, for the layperson, especially me, how is AI actually different? How is it different to an algorithm and making an impact in business?
Yeah, I think it's got that flexibility. So if we really simplify perhaps traditional automation, they are rule-based bots, and they can probably seem more advanced because you can chain your rules. So you can have lots of decision points and static rules that link up to enable the bot to get to a desired outcome. I think if I try and give an example, that's probably the best way of explaining perhaps the difference. And something we developed with a customer was an automation bot to help with delivery confirmation. So it is a supply chain specific example, and the bots were able to process what we'd call the more standard cases. But where it struggled, where fields weren't set, where you had free text, it couldn't handle those based on the rules because it couldn't kind of link those things up. So it was flagging exceptions. There was a big time saving because there was still lots of manual work happening on those more basic straight through processing that was saved, but there was still manual time needed for those exceptions. And I think when we look at now where we've gone with that use case with that customer, now AI is available. It's able to interpret the variations in the free text for the messages that are coming through from drivers about deliveries. It can handle more of those exceptions automatically. So it can categorize them. Is the delivery late? Were there damages? Are there returns coming back that they weren't aware of from the depot? So it can result in a little bit more end-to-end coverage, less manual effort, and some smoother processes.
Yep.
My mum's a mortgage broker, and she's approaching retirement, and we joke that AI is going to take her job pretty quickly. And she's hoping it's time that she can be made redundant. But ultimately, mortgage brokerage is a decision tree, and that's what she has to go through, but has to do it through 15 different systems. So in that example, that's probably just automation, whereas AI can actually go deep down into the exceptions and help to resolve them, if I've understood that correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's as well that contextual understanding, especially where things aren't as maybe straightforward or as clean cut. That's where AI can really kind of stand on its own 2 feet and make a big difference. Yeah.
I think Klarna said a week or so ago that they are now answering more than 50% of their customer service queries using a chatbot. And I think an insurance company has just talked about we're going to cap our staff at 100, currently at 95, and the team will need to use AI to get better and get more efficient as they grow. Which I guess, Gary, what would you expect a business to a typical ROI to be from an AI implementation? Are you getting money back kind of instantly, or does it take a bit longer than that?
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned a couple of different things there. We are definitely seeing, and even if you look at the people like the CEO of OpenAI, they now very openly talk out there in the market about businesses are now being built on AI, right? There are, they very confidently predict that, in the coming year or two, there will be $1 billion business, right? That's essentially run by one or just a handful of people. So the technology is advancing. I think aggressively is quite a strong word, but in reality, it's really transformative. It's moving at quite a pace. But there's the ROI is everywhere with AI projects that are delivered quickly, that are delivered correctly. I mean, we see big wins in AI where it's applied to, forecasting or supplier risk or document intelligence. Simple use cases, for example, like automating invoice matching or extracting data from shipping documents. So just small use cases, but they save huge amounts of time daily. And that's where all of the ROI starts. So a lot of what we say is that the key lessons are, start small, prove value, then scale. And those clients that focus on those real use cases, maybe stay away from kind of buzzwords, right? They're the guys that should be seeing a 10x return. And they really should be seeing a 10x return in this space. As I mentioned, huge predictions of businesses purely being built on AI nowadays. And the advancements in the intelligence of these solutions is quite astounding when we think about how far we've come in the last 18 or 24 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you see, I guess 2 questions here slightly. Do you see an AI project or implementation, is that a technology project or is it a business project? And then linked to that, we've all seen technology projects fail massively, causing huge disruption. Have you seen anybody outside of Shiny Blue Box, obviously, have you seen anyone do it wrong and fail when approaching AI projects?
Yeah, I think the answer to maybe both of those questions, for me at least, is kind of linked. So I think the biggest potential area for failure isn't about tech, and it is a tech project, and I think you should be treating AI like you would any other project that your organization is running. But most failures I see around being people and process. So process experts, the people that are there today doing the processes day in, day out, they know the quirks, they know perhaps those edge cases, but they also know kind of the true data picture. They know what happens against perhaps operating procedures that might exist or manuals that you've got in your organisation, which tells you how something should happen. And I think where I've seen that potential for failure, and one thing we really drum into our customers is that if those people are too busy, those people that know the processes and know how things should work, or for whatever reason they're excluded or not involved in those kinds of projects, then it can miss the mark. And very often those people aren't techies. They are your resource planners or your drivers that know the process. And I think if those guys are excluded, it can miss the mark when it's a process that involves them. But not only that, you can also see challenges then with adoption of any solution that you put in place, because people feel like they've been missed, or they've been cut out, or they've not been listened to. I think for me, the key kind of lesson with that is that success isn't, and kind of cutting through some of that hype, success isn't AI and automation. I think it's a mix of AI, automation, expertise of your people, buy-in of your senior leadership, and that will kind of lead you on to that success with any kind of tech or AI project.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I mentioned it earlier, AI is not a magic button, right? If you have a business that goes on a journey with you to adopt AI solutions, such as Fran's suggesting, having people involved in the journey, making sure we take the inputs from the SMEs within a business, typically we set ourselves up for success. And it's one of the things that we help guide our clients on through that sort of a journey. But we've all seen some, project failures, whether it's AI or any kind of software implementation. We've seen failures in the past. Everybody typically has, if you work in this world. And for context, AI typically fails when, when businesses jump in, without the right context. For example, they're, deploying a demand forecasting model with poor data quality. It's not that the AI failed, the setup did. AI is only as good as the environment you put it in, but it's not a magic button. But the outcomes are really quite astounding when we get everybody driving towards the same result. We listen to the people and the experts within any business, and we set that foundation for that we can benchmark for success.
So it's amazing how almost any business project comes down to people, process, and technology to be success. And whether it's AI or something from implementing fax machines 40 years ago, it's very much the same. And
I still remember fax machines, Chris. My hairline tells you very well that I remember fax.
You made me lose my train of thought. Fran, I think it's really interesting you talk about processes and SOPs. That to Scala, we've done a number of projects on warehouse automation and physical automation. And the thing that we always impress on our clients is that you have to have robust processes, because your ability to work around something now has disappeared. And I guess that's going to happen in software now as people automate with AI. And we've touched upon a couple of times now people and roles and the impact on them. And I mentioned earlier Klarna. And whenever AI comes up, the question is, including my mum, is this going to take my job? Mm-hmm. And with the best will in the world, I love my mum, but she isn't going to become a software coder or a writer at the end of her career. And your average warehouse worker is not going to become a hardware engineer. So where do you sit, Fran, with sort of augmentation of people's capabilities versus replacement, and what new skill sets are people going to have to deliver, and as they move to perhaps more strategic and value-add work? That's a huge question in one go. Apologies.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll tackle it. I think jobs evolve over time, and they always have. You've mentioned fax machines there, Chris, but looking at supply chain in particular, jobs were very different before barcodes existed, or before spreadsheets were invented, or even more recently before ERP systems were there. And I think over time, people have adapted their roles to using them, and now probably wouldn't be without them. If our ERP system goes down, everyone's got a big issue. Whereas when those were first brought in, people were kind of hesitant to jump in and use them. And I think AI will take a lot of the repetitive from people and move them more into strategic roles. I wrote a blog probably a few months ago now about how I feel that AI can give back your humanity, and my kind of thinking around that was a personal experience for me. So meetings in particular, I facilitate huge amounts of meetings, and when I'm sharing screen and I'm also taking notes and I'm also jotting down actions, I think it's very easy sometimes for me, or historically for me, to forget that I'm a participant of that meeting. And actually, especially now in a very remote world, I'm talking to other real people. And I look at the likes of Copilot and other kind of AI technologies that are now available to me. And those have meant that I can feel and be more present in perhaps those meetings and those situations, and even feel less like a robot myself because I've got an AI agent. And I think with any change, it can be daunting. And just like now that we work with barcodes, we work with spreadsheets, we have new systems coming in all the time, and we don't kind of give it a second thought. I think in the future, the same will probably apply to AI. I think this fear can also sometimes perhaps cause people to be more hesitant and cause people to pause. And we speak to a lot of customers that feel like that. And I think we always try and encourage them to get hands-on, even in really small ways, and build confidence out, because I think that's key. And I think that feeds some of that, is this going to take away my job, or is this going to replace me? And what is that going to look like today? I think that's kind of key, is that building of confidence. Once people understand something and they work with it and they like it and they can see how it can make their lives perhaps easier and help with things, then I think that confidence is built and they're able to progress that way.
Yeah, because the honest answer is AI is more likely to change people's jobs. There's an argument that some businesses may be looking to leverage AI to actually reduce headcount. More often not, that's not what we see. We see AI removing that kind of repetitive admin function to a job. So kind of letting teams move more into kind of problem solving, relationship building, rather than carrying the heavy load of perhaps more mundane, repetitive, routine work. So those best AI projects, they're those projects that are kind of co-created with the people that are actually doing the work, and then those people in turn become champions of the solutions themselves. I think the biggest fear we see is a loss of control. Once people see AI as an assistant rather than a replacement, all of that fear, it fades quite quickly. We like to always call this a hearts and minds piece, and it's an important piece that we tackle with most of our clients. But ultimately, any messaging about AI being adopted within a business, that messaging really needs to be run by the leadership of that business, and that needs to be correctly discussed down through that company. And as long as people are understanding that it's not here just to replace, it's here to augment, it's here to assist them and actually free them up to be more creative in their roles, as I say, that fear tends to go away.
Yeah, I find inside and outside of work, it's not yet replacing me, it's making me quicker. So
exactly.
I live in Austria, I speak some German, and at the start of my degree, Babelfish was around, and it was for translation, and it was absolutely awful. And now, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, Google Translate got better, but it could still make some quite bad errors. But now, between ChatGPT and Google Translate, it's phenomenal. Sometimes it'll just pick up the wrong word, but humans do that. So it's unbelievable how much it's come on, and it just definitely speeds me up. But at the moment, it doesn't replace me yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Even with your example there, AI has become so good now at understanding different dialects, not just different languages, different dialects, different different accents, whatever it may be. So I had a similar example as well recently, Chris. I was on holiday, and I was trying to speak to someone who didn't speak English, and me being just a standard English chap, I spoke no other language. But I opened up my ChatGPT, right, and I had a two-way conversation instantly. So simple examples, but you can translate those sorts of examples into a working environment. quite quickly, and you can see how AI becomes a real assistant to you, right? It can really help improve efficiency.
Definitely. And a question for either of you: is there anything in business that you would not let AI touch? I remember when AI first got a load of hype, there was a really good post on X where someone says, I want AI to do the dishes and the laundry for me, not to write a book and poetry for me. Is there anything that you think AI should stay away from?
So if we perhaps think about supply chain, I'd never let AI make a final call on a supply relationship, for example. Why data can inform, but trust and partnership still comes from human judgment. I mean, we talk about this regularly with businesses, but again, it comes back to AI should be the assistant. And ultimately, most AI is an assistive technology, and maybe it's a bit crude to say it, but it should really come back to a human to make a judgment and almost check the homework sometimes of the AI. So yeah, you still become, that's probably an example where I wouldn't let AI run an end-to-end. And yeah, it's your assistant. You ultimately remain in control of what that AI is doing for you, but you make that judgment decision. Fran, anything on your side?
I'd completely agree. I think managing any relationship, whether that's supplier, customer, internal team, vendor, I think history and kind of empathy really matter. And we're seeing some really cool examples working with customers of where they're using AI nearly to inform or coach or advise, but they're still kind of at the forefront of that human connection between themselves and the vendor. Absolutely, I think let AI do some of the heavy lifting and the back end work, but I think when it comes to being human, that's what we're really good at, and I don't think that will or should change, as Gary said, and as you said earlier, Chris. It's you've got an assistant. It's making you a little bit quicker off the mark. Maybe it's making you a little bit more efficient, but really you're still sitting in the driving seat.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely. And then looking ahead, I mean, AI has kind of probably been around for 2 years. I think we forget ChatGPT, I guess that was the start of all of this. Fran, what are your predictions over the next 3 to 5 years, and where will we what's the adoption curve look like? Where are we currently on the curve? There's some discussion that we're in the well of despair. It's not delivering what we think it should be. Share prices are incorporating huge efficiency gains through AI, but we're not necessarily getting them yet. People have just stopped hiring, but AI hasn't replaced it yet. So there's a lot of noise as well as hype at the moment, and people are trying to work out where we are. Where do you think we are right now, and what do you think it looks like in 3 or 5 years' time? I keep giving you the massive question.
No, that's fine. I think, so if I maybe rewind, Chris, perhaps 5 years ago from now, and I use this as an example with a customer, I think just last week. I was reading a really lengthy article about AI, and I was reading about all these cool things that it said AI was going to do, from creation of images to music to all of the things we're seeing today with helping write emails or transcriptions from meetings. And I got right to the bottom of this article, and it said, we currently expect that this will be possible in the next 15 to 20 years. And I remember getting to the bottom of that article and thinking, I've just spent 10 minutes reading this article, getting all excited for it to say it's not there yet. But actually, in 5 years, we're where it said we'd be in 15 to 20 years. So I think the landscape moves incredibly quickly. But I think if I apply it to supply chain, or more broadly, just where a lot of organisations will be, I think there's a lot of experimentation going on at the moment, a lot of pilots that I think will kind of be built into the everyday fabric of supply chain as we move forwards. I think the big shift isn't going to be perhaps around smarter AI or algorithms that are being built. I think it will be about integration. So AI supporting planning or logistics, procurement, forecasting, but all of that kind of talking to each other. I think at the moment we see a lot of disconnected tools and a lot of disconnected ecosystems. And I think as we progress over the next few years, that will start to become connected. I think that will mean that adoption will perhaps be more confident. As Gary said earlier, I think businesses will start small, and that's where a lot of people are today. But I think people will learn fast and through that learning, scale what works for them. And I think that's where kind of maturity comes from. And I do think in the next 3 to 5 years, that's where we'll start seeing that. It's not kind of one big leap, but that kind of steady continued progress over the next kind of 3 to 5 years. Yeah.
And we see that all the time where businesses are starting small. It's actually a recommendation of ours as well, is AI doesn't need to be this hugely scary big bang moment, right? You should really be approaching it in a staged and phased approach. And we tend to find that that's where the confidence builds and people go on good outcome journeys. But AI ultimately, it will become invisible soon in supply chain, but yet indispensable at the same time. 3 to 5 years is a long time in this space, Chris. I think in 3 to 5 years, in fact, much, much less than that. Supply chain professionals won't even talk about AI. It will just be how the job gets done, right? Like spreadsheets are today. The acceleration of capability in this space it's unbelievable. And that pace of development is not slowing down anytime soon. So AI will become intrinsically, embedded into all businesses across all functions. That's probably going to happen sooner than many people think.
I don't know if I feel excited or petrified.
It shouldn't be a scary thing. Let's also remember that AI business is very diligently thought of as a solution. There are guardrails around everything on how we build and develop and deliver AI projects. Security being the underlying foundation of everything we do as a business when we talk about AI projects and we talk about them across organizations. So we have to make sure we set up the right sort of guardrails first for any project. But AI shouldn't be a fearful technology. These solutions have existed for many, many years. We have a little bit more intelligence in them now, of course. But starting small, gain that confidence, gain that trust in the solutions and roll them out at your pace. And that's the way to do it. We're here to kind of take some of the pressure away from being a scary exercise because it shouldn't be.
Yeah, absolutely. And in doing some research for preparing for this, and believe it or not, I do so, I came across SAP's Joule AI solution. Is it Joule or Joule that works across the SAP platform and across all of the different applications? Which I thought, if SAP can make that work, and I'm assuming Oracle and Microsoft and Dynamics are looking at something similar, that would be pretty impressive. And I'm not quite sure what my question is. I just found it quite interesting. You've got these enterprise level that have got solutions for billion-dollar organizations that are integrating AI, where you've got the ecosystem that's already together, to your point earlier, Fran, versus I might have boutique providers for my supply chain planning, transport planning, ERP, marketing, CRM, and I need to somehow connect them all. Not really a question, more of a comment. I just found it interesting.
I was going to say, I think it's... Sorry, Gary, go on.
I was just to add to that, I mean, look, Chris, we see this all the time. I think if you look at traditional tech stacks, they have an AI flavour to them now. You may even see adverts on television if you're sitting at home at night and you'll see ServiceNow have got an advert about AI agents, so is Salesforce, so is Workday, right? And so you'll find ERP is not dissimilar. They are bringing in AI capabilities native to that platform. Absolutely. Fran?
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to touch on, Gary, is around like Agentforce in Salesforce. I think where you have those kind of key providers of systems and nearly ecosystems in businesses, perhaps it might feel like it's maybe easier to connect those dots and connect those different functions and different platforms. But I don't think that means that people who perhaps have more disconnected systems should be put off by that. I think the theme that Gary was kind of talking about earlier around starting small, you can build agents separately to do different tasks. And as you continue to grow in confidence and capability and with, the right providers around it, you can start to link those up where you can over time. it's not kind of a big bang approach. Doesn't have to be anyway.
And that brings us nicely onto kind of the final topic, and I mentioned it earlier about LLMs versus SLMs. I think ChatGPT being a LLM, or Google's Bard, is it called, can answer anything, but you don't need a HR chatbot for an internal business to be able to tell you about Plato. So, and then the analogy, I think, is that I don't need a Boeing 777 or an A380 to go from Edinburgh to London. Do you see the future being around LLMs or SLMs? I think I know the answer, but let's ask anyway.
Shall I give a view? Okay, so from a customer perspective, I think SLMs will dominate in the short term. Many companies don't need the kind of the jumbo jet analogy, as you put it. They need, reliable, secure, cost-effective jets that just fly the routes that they want to do, right? So, smaller, fine-tuned models will sit inside existing supply chain systems, for example, within their privacy. They're fast and they're compliant. There's a strong argument that LLMs still have a massive place in the business when you talk about cross-functional insights, connecting finance with logistics and procurement, for example. But I definitely think LLMs will dominate in the short term. Fran, anything from you?
I think, LLMs they're powerful, they're versatile, they're a bit of a jack of all trades and sometimes a master in certain tasks, but they can perhaps be overkill, to your point, Chris. I think the draw of LLMs really is, at the moment, they are accessible. They can handle many things, especially if you're in the position where you don't have internal resources to train SLMs. But SLMs they're leaner, they're purpose-built. They can be more cost, but also perhaps more importantly, resource efficient. And I think the adoption of those SLMs will be growing over the next few years. And I think LLMs will still, as Gary said, be useful for complex multi-system use cases, but overall it's just starting practically kind of picking the right tool for the job and moving that ahead in that way. I think, like Gary, if I had to put my money on anything, I think it would be kind of smaller specialized models. I like the jumbo jet analogy, but I think you're right, Chris. You don't need to kind of take your car to the corner shop for a bottle of milk. You pick what's best for purpose, and you pop your shoes on and you take a wander down the street. Then I think LLMs are great. They're versatile, they're accessible, they're brilliant for maybe exploration, but they are a bit of a Swiss Army knife. I think in supply chain in particular, what's important: precision, reliability, efficiency, and I think that's where SLMs are really going to shine. LLMs might become the backbone, the main interface, but I think the real work in the near future will be done by more small targeted models. Yeah.
Really interesting, and I'm super grateful for your time and the discussion. I hope you find it interesting, but I've certainly found it interesting, and hopefully the listeners will. And kind of one final thought from both of you: there's a lot of talk in financial press at the moment that we're approaching a bubble bigger than the dot-com bubble, and that the hype isn't justified, or the share prices of these businesses are just too big a multiple and just massively overhyped. So is the hype justified? Are we going to see genuine transformation, or is there a risk that this is another blockchain and we never actually see any real use cases?
Well, I've also been keeping an eye on the comments that are out there at the moment. I've also seen fear mongering in the stock markets and such, right? That there's a bubble that may burst. I think the hype is justifiable, and let's not forget that AI solutions now have a huge amount of brains and intelligence. It's a category. If you think about automation software, that's a category that's been well adopted by businesses for 10, 12, even up to 15 years now. We've been doing this a long time, but AI solutions have taken it to the next level. We like to call it the brains versus the brawn here at Shiny. You've got the brawn of automation software that loves routine tasks, and it churns out tasks, rules-driven tasks all the time. But you've now got this wonderful brain of intelligence that AI can overlay across automation. So it's more of a evolution of this space rather than a complete revolution. But this market will only ever continue to increase. I think these solutions are here to stay. I think once companies have more and more trust in these solutions, they will continue to be adopted at a faster pace. I do think that there may be a case that some say that there were some overinflated valuations on stock out there. But to be honest, if you look at the capability that AI has to truly transform the software industry and businesses, perhaps it's justified. But interesting to watch this space over the next year or two, because if you just look at where it's come from in the last 18 to 24 months, the advances in these technologies are what's driving that kind of, that investment and that stock outlook. Really interesting times, right?
Yeah, look, I think I agree with everything Gary's just said there. So I don't want to be maybe too repetitive, but perhaps just add a little bit to that. I don't think that the companies that will win will perhaps be the ones with the best or most advanced AI. We know it's accessible, and it is a bit of a level playing field for most. I think in terms of accessibility, everyone's got the opportunity. But I think the ones that will really stand out are going to be the ones that still prioritize a lot of what we've been talking about earlier, and that's kind of human connection. I think AI will make supply chains faster, smarter, more efficient, as you said earlier, Chris. But I think trust, relationships, collaboration will kind of be the key to standing out in that world. I think sometimes the hype makes everyone feel like it's man versus machine, but I think it's more so man with machine. And I think those who kind of learn to lead both, I think, are going to shape the next generation of not only supply chain success, but general organizational success as well.
Yeah, we're already seeing where AI is making a real impact in supply chain, right? In forecasting accuracy, in demand planning, in document intelligence, in supplier risk, in automation of those repetitive tasks that used to hold people back. So those aren't futuristic ideas anymore, Chris. They're live, they're here, they're measurable. What we also think is exciting is how people's roles are evolving alongside it. We've mentioned some of this earlier, that the conversation is shifting away from, is AI going to take my job, to how AI can make my job better. So that's a cultural shift that we're seeing, and it's where AI is really starting to fly. So there's hype, and that fades fast when you focus on what matters. AI isn't a silver bullet. We've mentioned some of that before. But when it's done right, it truly transforms businesses. So it's a really exciting category to be involved in at the moment. And sky's the limit, as we like to say. We're interested to see where it goes.
So as my financial advisor, I really like that analogy of brain versus brawn. And the Hut Group 2 or 3 years ago installed an auto store. An auto store, the physical element of it probably hasn't changed that much since it was first designed. But they increased output with no additional people by something like 30 or 50% from one year to the next. And it was the improvement in the algorithm. So an auto store with ABC classification, and how much it mines depends on how much the throughput is. And the algorithms have improved that much that they've got so much extra throughput through the same level of physical automation.
Right.
I think that's what we're really excited about at Scala, is the impact of software on hardware in the physical supply chain. I think like dynamic slotting and ABC classification in a warehouse done daily is something that has almost been a pipe dream. So yeah, very exciting. I hope for the listeners that you've enjoyed that. I think really insightful and hopefully at the forefront of what's happening in the world of AI. If you have enjoyed it, please do subscribe to get alerts for future newsletters and podcasts. And it just remains for me to say, Gary and Fran, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and sharing your experience, your thoughts, and that of Shiny Blue Box as well.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's been a pleasure to talk today. Hope you found it useful as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Thanks for listening to Supply Chain Beyond the Hype.
Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and get notified when new episodes are released.